All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we will stand for a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, come on out with the roll call.
Kevin Ryman,
Here.
Michael Cox, Jamie Girardi,
Here.
Peter Hansel,
Here.
Roberto Paez,
Here.
and Sharon Charles Ray.
Here.
I'm
All
here
right.
too.
So
Williams is here too.
at this time, for anyone who plans to give testimony today, if you will stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
All right, thank you. You're going to read the proof of publication?
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on November 2nd, 2018, November 9th, 2018, November 16th, 2018, and November 17th, 2018.
Okay, thank you. So before we go any further, do we have any public comment, something that is not on the agenda today? I see no one. All right. So for those of you who haven't been here before, I'll go through the procedures that we follow. I'd just like to welcome everybody today. The Planning Commission is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. We meet twice a month. The Planning Commission serves as a local planning agency. The Planning Commission holds public hearings and transmits to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests. Thank you, Ray. Certain requests. However, the final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive plan amendment, land development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commission meeting. Okay, so we have, the way we set it up is we have a consent agenda, and on that agenda are items where we have not received any objections from the staff or the public. Those items will be gone through on a one-by-one basis. If you see something on consent that you wish to have discussed today, raise your hand. We'll remove it from consent for further discussion. And we also have continuances. It's our tradition, if a continuance is requested by the applicant or the staff, to grant those continuances unless there are extenuating circumstances. And so, are there any questions at this time? Okay. So, are you ready?
Ready. Good afternoon, Coral and Howell, current planning. The first item I would like to address is P4, since it's a continuance. If we could, please, if that's okay with you guys.
P4? Okay.
It's an ordinance amending the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan Highway Vision Plan Map 7-36 to update roadways and modify the title to Highway Vision Plan and Functional Class Map repealing existing functional class map 7-1.
Roland,
Yes?
You don't have to read the whole thing.
Oh,
for
thank
today.
goodness. Because it's long. Staff is recommending a continuance to the December 13th, 2018 local planning agency meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Do I hear a
Second.
second? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is PC1, which is a consent item. It's for Pasco County Facilities Management Department. But before the consent can be voted on, the P6 for the large-scale comp plan amendment, comp CPA L 1817 would need to be heard first. So I'm not sure how you want to go about doing that.
Well, then let's go to P6.
Okay. P6, Viviana, you're P6. It's your turn.
Good afternoon, Viviana Martinez, Planning and Development Department. Also, you will now be acting as a local planning agency for this matter. So item P6, PDD 190150, is a county-initiated large-scale comprehensive plan amendment in the name of CPEL 1817 Vincent Academy. The project proposes to change the future land use from IL Industrial Light future land use to PSP Public Semi-Public future land use on approximately 58.2 acres. The subject property is located northwest of Pasco County, and it's just north of Denton Avenue and northwest of Mattis Road. You can't see it so much there, but the Mike Fasano Regional Hurricane Shelter is just east of that property, right here, which is also county initiated. Some of the surrounding zoning districts include AC, agricultural districts, and I1, light industrial park districts. Some of the future land uses surrounding are PSP, public semi-public to the north and east of the subject property, and to the south and west of the property is IL. As I've mentioned, the existing land use is IL and it's proposed to go to PSP, public semi-public land use. The property is currently vacant and is also Pasco County owned. And this depicts just the future land uses surrounding the subject property. As you can see, there's a lot of PSP surrounding the land use, and all of those are county owned. The only one that's not county owned is the one that we're trying to switch, that is currently IL, that we're trying to switch over to PSP in order for it to conform to the rest of the land uses. And this is just a picture depicting what it would look like with PSP, with conforming to the rest of the land uses. The first portion just talks about, and I'm sorry, there's a typo, it should say PSP, public semi-public, but the description on the bottom is correct. It's just going over what permitted uses are within PSP. And as I've mentioned, the change is really to bring it up to conformity to the rest of the surrounding land uses. In addition to that, however, Pasco County is working with Vincent Academy to create an educational facility and wants to conduct business in one of the parcels there. So this doesn't have the updated parcels, but there's actually 2 parcels, and it's part of what will be part of the consent agenda as well. But it'll be just southwest of within that parcel. If I could just click, hold on 1 second. So it'll be just southwest and within that parcel, it'll be 10 acres. and they plan to rezone that property. That petition number 7353 Vincent Academy. No transportation needs assessment was needed because the increase, the land use change did not increase the 50 peak hour trips, so it wasn't needed. With that, let me read the correct one. It says, recommends the LPA finds this amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and to recommend the approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Sorry, and thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
All right, any questions from up here?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Yes, tell me.
Go ahead, Pete.
You talked about Vincent Academy. Is that going to become a charter school? Is that what you're
It
alluding
is, I don't believe it is, it's named as a charter school. It's just an educational facility, education and work program that helps, from my understanding, individuals get back into the workforce. I don't think it was considered as a charter school, right? No.
Mr.
to?
Chairman,
Public school then?
It
Who's going to
was-
operate it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the Vincent Academy is in my understanding is that it's a nonprofit. It is not a public school and it is not a charter school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then are you going to convey the property to Vincent Academy?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Is the property conveyed to Vincent Academy?
Correct, yeah, so.
And are
it
they going to reimburse the county for the property?
will
Or
it
is this a
be-
donation?
That is a matter that I believe the Community Development Department is working on. So right now, this is Terry Pitos with the Planning and Development Department.
So you're asking us to go ahead and approve this based on
No,
some
what's
questionable,
before the Planning Commission today is a land use change. The subject property is currently county-owned, and the adjacent properties to the north and east are also county-owned within the public, semi-public land use. And so this land use change would be bringing this particular property into conformity with the neighboring properties. And were we to do this, and should the Vincent Academy proceed, it would still be consistent with the PSP future land use.
Okay, Pete?
well, there's still some questions in my mind, but I'm not going to get the answers I want, so.
Well, to be clear, the purview of the planning commission is to decide whether this change of land use is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Correct, I understand
You're
that.
you're not reviewing the real estate transaction in this case.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Is anybody in the audience wants to speak about it? See no one? Okay, so do I hear a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
That brings us back to Coral and Howell. So PC1 is the rezoning amendment on consent for Pasco County Facilities Management Department. Vincent Academy, change in zoning from RMH Mobile Home District to AR Agricultural Residential District. It's located on the north side of Denton Avenue, approximately 1,100 feet west of Mattis Road, containing approximately 10 acres.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Does anybody else need to speak on this issue? So do I hear a motion?
That was consent.
Well, I want to tie it into the other one, though, so let's go ahead and vote on it.
Move for approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
I'm
carries.
opposed.
Okay, one opposed.
Yeah.
All right.
PC2 is a conditional use request, Jasmine Center LLC, Ballpark Auctions LLC, an indoor auction house in an C2 General Commercial District. It's located on the west side of US Highway 19 and on the south side of Jasmine Boulevard. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval. It's on consent, but I just want to let you know there was a couple of changes made to the agenda that I passed out. The changes were to add "and outdoor," so it's indoor and outdoor on the PC, and those were the only changes on that item.
Okay. So is there anyone else here to speak on this topic? All right, I see no one, so we'll leave it on consent.
The next item is PC 3, zoning amendment, Oakstead MPUD Master Plan Development, Bernard LLC, a rezoning request from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District and an MPUD Master Plan Development District to an MPUD to allow an increase in the total number of dwelling units from 1,200 to 1,300, decrease commercial entitlements, split tract 1, and to bring approximately 13.8 additional acres into the MPUD development located on approximately 866 acres, along with a variation from section 901.3.m.1 cross-access. It's located on the southeast corner of the intersection of State Road 54 and Oakstead Boulevard. It's coming to you with a recommendation of approval from PDD.
All right,
Oh, and that one also has changes to it, which I handed out. The agenda memorandum was rewritten to be more clarifying as to what the variation was. And then the conditions of approval, condition 34 needed to be rewritten for tracks 1A, 1B, and 1C for the time limit of expiration for the MPUD.
all right. This is on consent, so is there anybody who wants this pulled for any reason? You'd like to have it pulled? Pardon me?
He wants to make comments.
Oh, well, then we'll have to pull it. All right. Anything else, Orlin?
That concludes the consent agenda items.
Okay, so for those items remaining on consent, do I have a motion to approve?
That's just PC2, correct?
Yeah.
So moved. Second.
All in
Is
favor?
that with the noted changes that were handed out?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So we're pulling PC3.
Yes.
All right. So, sir, if you'd like to come up and then make a comment? State your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Dennis Prieb, and I live at 3138 Sheehan Drive in Land O'Lakes, which is part of the Oakstead CDD. And I appreciate the opportunity to make comments on this proposed amendment. I have two concerns and I guess one related question. As a predicate comment, you stated that there were changes made to some of the documents. Were those available online?
No, they were not.
All right, well, then I guess a predicate issue is not having seen those. The comments and concerns I'm going to make are based upon the documents that were posted online as of roughly 9 o'clock this morning. So if there are changes, this gives me a little bit of concern and difficulty in being able to comment on what is apparently before the board. But be that as it may, let me just express my two concerns. The first concern I have is the proposal to increase the density of the overall MPUD from 1,200 to 1,300, and in particular, the density of tract 1C. The proposal is to allow 100 townhomes potentially to be constructed. That seems to be a very substantial density for the area encompassed by tract 1C. Please keep in mind that, that is specific to 1C. It is not a statement of the remainder of the Oakstead CDD, which is fully developed. And so what you're going to do is, in essence, squeeze 100 new homes into a very small area, which to me is inconsistent with the overall concept behind the Oakstead CDD in general, and specifically to the existing homes and improvements that are in that CDD. I guess my ultimate question is whether or not it's appropriate at this time for the commission to approve the petition without requiring greater specificity in terms of green areas, common areas that would help ameliorate the density issue that I'm raising here. My second concern deals with the proposal to create what's called a full access driveway in order to gain access from Oakstead Boulevard to tracks 1A and 1B. And in my mind, I think there's 3 serious traffic issues that need to be considered. The current layout of the SR 54 Oakstead intersection has a potential to create an ongoing safety issue with this driveway, since eastbound SR 54 traffic turning onto Oakstead Boulevard must first travel up a very significant slope. Turning left, you have to go up a slope. And then immediately, all traffic, whether left turning or right turning off of westbound, all traffic must immediately navigate a curve on Oakstead Boulevard. And it seems to me that that short distance between the completion of the turn process and the curve, followed by the driveway, would potentially create some safety issues, and perhaps it would be appropriate to engage in further study to determine whether or not that in fact is an issue. The second concern I have with respect to the traffic is during weekday morning rush hour and occasionally on weekends, Oakstead Boulevard traffic in the SR 54 left turn lane can back up. It's almost guaranteed to during weekday rush hours. And the close proximity of this proposed new driveway to tracks 1A and B could be blocked by this backed up traffic. And as a result, you're going to have a situation where cars who are exiting the parcels 1A and B trying to turn left and then ultimately turn left onto SR 54 would be blocked. And to me, that would create a potential safety hazard given what I just said about other vehicles having to come around the corner. My third concern with respect to that tracks 1A and B driveway.
Excuse me, sir. Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
So if you could just wrap it up for us.
All right. The only other comment I had with respect to that was there's an existing cut through that is there. It's been there ever since the original Oakstead CDD was developed. There is a proposal here in this petition to create an existing, make use of that for track 1C. And I guess my question is, why not funnel tracks 1A and B traffic down to the 1C entrance, make use of the existing berm, and that berm is far away from the intersection that I described, and it seems to be more appropriate and less of a safety hazard. Thank you.
We'll try to address your questions. Corlin, you want to address those, or do you have somebody else?
Really, I think the applicant should be addressing some of
Yeah,
this.
the applicants here, they can address all those concerns.
All right.
Good afternoon, Barbara Wilhite, 2523 Permit Place, Newport 2, Florida, 34655 for the applicant. I have with me Steve Henry, who has done an access management analysis that was thoroughly reviewed by staff, and he can explain his analyses and address those concerns. The other one has to do with the townhomes. The property right now is approved for 180,000 square feet of commercial. And so it's actually a down zone in intensity. Why we're here is to have commercial uses and then townhomes. There's already 2 townhome products, neighborhoods already in Oakstead, so it's nothing unusual. As far as green space and common areas, there's a neighborhood park ordinance that's required for this very reason. We'll have to comply with that. So we're going from 180,000 square feet to 40,000 square feet of commercial, and we're adding those townhomes in between the commercial and the existing neighborhood. And so that's the plan there. And then we have Steve explain the transportation issues.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. Steve Henry, Links & Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607. To address his comments, first was the location of the driveway and the eastbound left turn and the curve. We have looked at that. We, in fact, have done a site distance analysis to evaluate whether or not there's adequate site distance there. for the vehicles exiting to be able to see and be people to stop. And there is sufficient, and we've provided that to staff. They reviewed it and have agreed with that analysis. And in addition to, as far as the queue, we actually did a detailed queue analysis of that southbound traffic to make sure that, in fact, with the existing plus our project traffic, they would not,
Can you turn that one down a bit?
there would not be a queue problem with the operations of that being a full median opening. And from our standpoint, and looking at that, and staff looking at, there is not going to be a queue issue with that.
All right. Got any questions up here? All right. Anything further from the applicant?
Thank you.
Okay. So, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to say, I always get a little squirrely converting stuff back to residential, but it's multifamily, so it won't have a big impact on us.
On the school? Okay.
You know, I want to dovetail on that.
Yeah.
I have a concern when we start taking commercial off the table and going back to any type of residential. It doesn't really help the tax base, and the overall plan of that development to begin with was to have that there. So, not really in favor of it.
Okay. So do I have a motion, one way or the other?
Before you make a motion, just for the record, I'm happy to give the gentleman the changes that were handed out, but I don't think any of these changes materially affect the two concerns that he raised, or the three concerns he raised. But if he wants a copy, I'm happy to give him my copy. I don't know where he went.
The only thing I can say about it is that it's typically, in my business, it's good policy to separate commercial, higher density residential, and then low residential. So conceptually, you know, I think it's a fairly reasonable approach. In terms of the tax base, that's a different issue. But anyway, that's my view of it. So I'm open to a motion.
I'll move that we recommend to the board to deny.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
May we have a moment to add to your conversation?
Can you wait till we get it, see if we get a
Okay,
motion?
all right.
So
I don't
we have
think you're
a-
going to get a second.
We have a motion to deny, we don't have a second so far. Okay, so the motion dies for lack of a second.
Let me make a comment in reference to this specific project. I'm familiar with the original idea to build over 100,000 square footage of office building in this specific parcel. And we need to be realistic. I understand that we need to think about the revenue that this property will give to the county if it's all retail or commercial. Over 100,000 square footage in this specific location is nothing that you can collect that amount of money in the next 5 to 10 years. I believe that it's a good move to build the transition between the existing community and the office park or retail that are going to be located at the south side of the parcel with townhouses. So I'm in favor to move this motion, and I believe it's a good plan, it's a good strategy to move this parcel. This is a parcel that have been there with the original plan for offices since 2006, if I'm not mistaken, 2005, 2006, and have been there for a long time. We understand the recession impact the business and the office park, but I think it's the time, and it's not too much townhouses available. The houses around that area, the value of the houses is around $350,000 to $400,000. I believe the townhouses will be lower than that, and we are able to offer this property to middle-class families that need to move in the area, and we need that to move there. So I'm in favor to move the motion to approve it.
So we have a motion to approve, we have a second?
Does that include the changes that were handed out?
Yes.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
I almost seconded your motion, Mr. Commissioner Cox. I was on the fence, so. If it was more units, I probably would have.
Yeah. 100 here, 100 there.
Well, and you're right, and that equates to a classroom
That's
before
right.
you know it.
Did you vote nay?
I did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
By the way, when we're doing this in the future, it'd probably be good if you vote nay to say nay.
Okay,
I think it's confusing to the clerk when you say aye.
I apologize.
Okay.
Said I again.
I know.
The next item is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 1901, Project Arthur, large-scale comp plan amendment from AGR, Agricultural, Rural, Commercial, COM, CON, Conservation Lands, IL, Industrial Light, Mixed Use, MU, and Res 3, Residential 3 dwelling units per acre, to a PD plan development, and providing for a text amendment creating the associated sub-area policy FLU 7.1.43, Project Arthur, on approximately 6,951.1 acres located south of State Road 52 and east of the Suncoast Parkway. And I believe Ernie will be presenting this item.
Thank you. Ernie Monaco, Executive Planner, Long Range Planning. Okay, I'd like to ask the board, do we have ex parte forms I'd like to submit? Wow, okay. I'm standing too close? No, I guess, okay.
Stand back by the door.
Can we get a motion to receive and file the ex parte forms, please?
Move to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Well, look and see, and
Oh, no, this is the right one. Great, super, thank you. As Corlin read into the record the actual subject, it comes to you today, oh man, with a recommended agency action to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment, amending the future land use map 215 together with sheet 11, and changing to the plan development map 2.943, providing for the text amendments and the associated sub-area policies. Maybe I should speak louder. Maybe you can hear me if I just spoke. Would it be easier? Yes. About the echo? Okay, I'll just talk loud. Okay, site location here, located south of 52, east of the Suncoast Parkway, and west of the CX rail line.
Ernie,
Yes.
it's just important that she can hear it to get it on the record.
Maybe I should, okay, great. Okay, the applicant is proposing a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment requesting a PD planned development in place of the current allowable future land uses. So that on the table, it breaks it down by acres of what the existing FLU is. You can see it's agricultural, almost 5,000 acres, commercial, conservation, industrial light, mixed use, residential has a large number as well, 1629. The total acres is 6,951. Surrounding uses, the surrounding character of the area is predominantly commercial, residential, and industrial uses, with the Starkey Wilderness Park adjacent on the west side of the Suncoast. The change to a planned development is supported by past studies and reports. I'll just highlight two of them. As you, Project Arthur exemplifies the county's goals in the central market area by creating a thriving, interconnected community where residents can live, work, and play. Now, as you know, I think it was mentioned earlier regarding really the impacts of this, as you know, Pasco County is a bedroom community with most jobs located outside the county. And what that does is it creates long commutes for residents, lots of roads to get to these jobs, inefficient land uses, environmental impacts, and encourages sprawl. So being a bedroom community, I think this is what was mentioned earlier, creates fiscal limitations on county revenues and services. We really can't afford to continue to become, or continue to be the bedroom community and do all the things that we would like to do to make Pasco County a more premier county. So this is actually a great opportunity to attract and capture new jobs here. With a high-tech campus setting adjacent to housing, opening up a whole range, are you gonna let me speak? Try it again? Oh, maybe they did it, okay. A whole range of opportunities for residents able to live, work, and play instead of commuting outside, thus strengthening our local economy and keeping their dollars here. We have a series of proposed sub-area policies in your packet we're putting into place, particularly providing opportunities to walk or take your golf cart to work, to the shops, to the schools and the parks on neighborhood paths, thus reducing the traffic on our local roads. The location off of the Suncoast is ideal for a high-tech employment activities, and the eastern border is the CSX line, which also strengthens our hands to support a regional train line in the future. The ULI report, I just mentioned these things because this is about the supporting policy for the county's goals, but the ULI report in 2008 for the central market area specifically called for the location of proposed uses along 52 and the Suncoast and major intersections that would promote higher density, compact development that can preserve open space, enhancing the ecological areas and a strong mix of uses. So let's get to the actual project. Project Arthur is creating an incredible high-tech job opportunity for Pasco County by creating a corporate business park within the site under the planned development FLU change. The existing FLU already allows 11,495 residential units. There will be no change in the housing, no change at all. The existing FLU also allows 10,306,318 square feet of non-residential land uses, predominantly commercial uses, activities like that. What's being proposed is a corporate business park of 24 million square feet, the 52 interchange node, 1,050,000 square feet, and the additional non-residential flexible areas, 4,400,000 square feet. What that really means is that there's a net increase. What's actually being proposed is a net increase of approximately 19 million square feet of employment-generating land uses within the corporate business park setting. The housing that's already allowable, the 11,495 units, basically can support this park because what we're trying to do is create people to live near where they're going to work. So this is actually a great opportunity to do so. The proposed amendment does not propose to increase the levels of density and the intensity of residential or non-residential development, with the exception of that corporate business park right there. I'm going to go overview some of the examples of some of the most interesting policies. There are lots of policies that are protecting us, like protecting the county's interests, et cetera, but I find these are a little bit more interesting, more state-of-the-art policies. The sub-area policies proposed for Project Arthur promote innovation, technology, and sustainability. The key planning elements that really make up, similar to the Connected City, have been basically incorporated into Project Arthur as well. And those things are such as walkability, connectivity, and alternate vehicle plans. Here's an example of innovation of what it could look like. This is typical, it doesn't mean it's going to exactly look like this, but these are just samples of what a corporate business park looks like in a suburban setting. Typically, there are high-tech companies that come in, they need lots of R&D, they need the high-tech internet fast-speed service. So in addition to blending the entitlements allowed by the pre-existing FLU classification, the PD plan amendment creates substantial additional employment-generating opportunities through the creation of a large-scale corporate business park. Let's talk about a few little quickly examples, some of the policies for economic development, highlighting some of them. The PDED policy ED 2.2, encouraging public-private partnerships. We've done that with Metro and Connected City. We're likely to do it again to have more public-private partnerships. ED 2.3 is promoting new primary and target industries. We want the jobs, and we are targeting them particularly. Policy ED 2.4, promoting diversified economy, which helps us going through recessions, which happen on a regular basis. Policy ED 2.5, and promoting joint efforts with other agencies, find alternative financing for things, local development initiatives, and increasing the target industry jobs. For technology, the sub-area policies encourage the use of advanced technologies for economic development and improve the quality of life for current and future residents, business owners, and workforce members. The policies were, again, modeled on Connected City to take advantage of today's technology, as well as leaving the door open for advanced technologies that will come in the future. The policies will actually set the stage for the future by considering how technology contributes to a thriving business environment and helps to create the jobs, because all the jobs that are being created now are very dependent upon high-speed internet technologies that are emerging and have emerged. Let's go quickly, some sample policies. LED 3.1, promote the advanced technologies such as gigabit technology in land use and implementation. We're seeing that in Connected City right now. We like to repeat that same thing here. Policy LED 3.10, encourage alternative transportation nodes for multiple travel options. This is really exciting for transportation planners because it basically allows people to be able to do more than just take their car and use local roads to get to their jobs, to get to their schools, to get to the grocery store. It's great. So it allows golf carts, it allows walking, jogging trails, and then you can, and local roads that get to the employment centers. TP 4.1, assess emerging transportation trends reliant on advanced technology and leveraging transit opportunities. Again, we've got great opportunity because the CSX line is there. In the future, we'd like to see that as a commuter line. Policy PF 6.1, Wi-Fi in public gathering spaces. Again, this was a requirement in Connect the City as well. It's really important to have that. Be totally connected. Policy NRC 5.6, reduce energy and water consumption. That's a lot of technical, like smart meters and things like that. So these are just interesting things. Sustainable development goals. They promote efficient use of land, the conservation of natural resources, their resource-efficient designs and construction, and the use of renewable energy sources. So I'll go quickly some of the policies in that. PAD 1.4, incorporate designs for interconnected roads, alternative vehicles, trails, and sidewalk networks. LUD 3.2, encouraging walkable block sizes in flexible use areas. Policy 3.3, incorporate location of public spaces, transit, and other public services with pedestrian, bicycle, and neighborhood vehicle networks. And policy LUD 3.4, encouraging that flexible mix of land uses. It's building and site design, landscaping elements, public art elements. They all frame and activate streets as public areas, establishing a human scale, and they ensure a safe, attractive, pedestrian-oriented environment, which really supports all users. For feasibility analysis, as part of the staff review that was conducted, the utility needs assessment, the Pasco County Utilities Capacity Statement for this particular amendment indicates that there's sufficient capacity will be available for adequate wastewater treatment services for this development through their implementation of planned improvements. Potable water capacity is sufficient. Solid waste concurrency statement is contingent upon the county receiving all the necessary permits and approvals and payment of the solid waste assessment fees. For the transportation needs assessment, Development Code Section 1.12.C2E, that particular portion of the PD, future land uses that generate jobs, the offices, industrial, and or the corporate business park, is actually exempt from transportation analysis and the comprehensive plan needs assessment. The non-exempt uses proposed in the PD CPAL are at or below the maximums currently approved on a blended basis in the comprehensive plan. So therefore, no transportation needs assessment is required for the comprehensive plan purposes. However, the timing and phasing analysis is being performed incident to the companion MPUD analysis. So this is actually a change to the comprehensive plan amendments and maps. Later on, as you get to the details, the conditions of approval come with the MPUD stage. For police, fire, and schools, fire stations, the sheriff's office, and the schools are currently under active negotiation with the MPUD application. This is, again, where the conditions of approval will be put in place. With respect to the comprehensive plan, sub-area policies have been included, and they encourage co-location and joint use of schools with the public facilities, such as the parks and the libraries. I'll give you a quick overview of what the vision map changes on the internal site. We know that earlier today, there was a continuance for the highway vision plan map. That is the whole area-wide county map where all the necessary collector roads, arterial roads are being adjusted and revised. For this particular project right here, there have already been some studies. They've already made some improvements that need to be made. And so you'll see that the entire county won on December 13th, but this will be incorporated into that as well. But I'm going to quickly just show you what's happening there. What's proposed within this particular site. Segment 1 is to be changed from a collector to an arterial roadway with the design characteristics consistent with that already conceptually approved by the county. Segment 2 is an existing alignment, but it's going to be moved. It's an existing alignment on the highway vision plan. It's going to be relocated to the proposed alignment farther south and larger, longer. Segment 3 is going to be removed because the transportation benefits associated with the construction of this particular segment don't justify the environmental impacts associated with its construction. There's a lot of sensitive areas as ecological corridors. What's great about a PD is you don't lock into a particular use in a particular spot. You can move things around, and as a result of that, there's benefits that we can gain by doing that. I'm going to pretty much conclude that the range of uses is consistent with the intent of the PD plan development FLU. For the comprehensive plan, the intent of a plan development is to provide for a variety of land uses and intensities within a development site to preserve conservation areas above and beyond what the Land Development Code requires, reduces public investment in the provision of services, encourages flexible and creative site design, provides sites for schools, recreation, and other public facilities which provide an area-wide benefit to the entire community. Thus, the flexibility of making this change to a planned development FLU allows land uses to be located where it's most appropriate and beneficial to the county's natural resources and needs. So in conclusion, the proposed comprehensive plan amendment to the PD permits a range of residential, commercial, office, light industrial, and corporate business park land uses needed for a successful mixed-use community with the proposed corporate business park and supporting housing in close proximity. The PT flu is consistent with our comprehensive plan and proposed sub-area policies. The Planning Department recommends that the LPA find this amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Now, maybe perhaps I should read in the exact recommended agency action so we know exactly what has to happen. We recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 1901, Project Arthur, amending the future land use FLU map 2-15 together with sheet 11, and the changes are from AG/R agricultural rural, COM commercial, CON conservation lands, IL industrial light, MU mixed use, and Res 3, which is 3 dwelling units per gross acre, to the planned development PD. It's on map 2.-943, and providing for a text amendment creating the associated sub-area policy FLU 7.143. That's what we're recommending.
Attorney, can I ask you a question? So just so we're clear, you showed the Planning Commission some changes to the vision map, but they're not voting on those today.
They're not voting on those today, no. They're basically, and again, in about 2 weeks, I think December 11th or 13th, I think they're coming for you with the entire county vision highway map, and you'll see them there. And that's when you will vote directly on the highway vision map changes. Not today. It's only right now the comp plan amendment for all these mixed uses to change to a planned development. That's what we're doing today. And and adding the sub-area policies, which I spoke about, which are really important policies they add.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Ernie, is there any other questions up here? All right, to speak for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, Clark Hobby and Hobby PA, 109 North Brush Street, Tampa, Florida, have been sworn. We're here today having had about a year and a half of work on this project to get to this point with the county staff. And before I do anything else, I just wanted to thank the staff, a few members in particular who've been working with us on this all along. Dan Biles, David Goldstein, Don, Terry, Ernie, Amy, Brad, Ollie, and Essen have been the ones who've spent the most time on it to get it to this point. And just to make this a simple matter again, just to emphasize what we're trying to do here today, there's a mishmash of a number of future land use classifications on this large piece of property that already have a significant amount of entitlements. So what we're asking the LPA today is to recommend to the board that we consolidate those within one planned development category. And the only increase that we're seeking in any particular use above what already exists is the employment generating corporate business park, which I think is something that everybody knows in the county we can all get behind and support. So I'm here to answer any questions, but one important bit of clarification, Mr. Goldstein just asked about the highway vision map changes. It was our understanding that those were being recommended to proceed for the portion that's within the project today. And the staff memo reads that way, so we're a little bit confused about that.
So I'm also confused because the agenda item doesn't reference the change to the vision map. It only
does in the project overview on the bottom of page 1 of the staff report. The last full paragraph references that, and then there's the exhibit, shows the highway vision maps in attachment 2, but the reference to attachment 2 was not included in that paragraph. But again, it is important to the project as we proceed.
So the Planning Commission can recommend that additional items be added to this amendment. So I just think that if staff is going to process those vision map changes with this amendment, it needs to be part of the subject line and the ad and everything else. There's nothing, I don't see anything. Is it part of the ad? I'll ask. Did the ad also talk about the vision map changes?
What was the question, David, please?
It was the ad.
The ad for this amendment, did it include the amendments to the vision map?
An Here, you guys read it. I don't know.
An ordinance, the ad says specifically, an ordinance amending the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan, oh, it does say that, yes, Highway Vision Plan, map, is this mine, right, okay. Map 738 to update roadways and modify, no, this is the one that was continued.
That's the one he's asking.
No, I'm not. I'm asking about
No.
this one for Project
The ad
Arthur.
for this one, no.
Oh.
I'm asking about the ad for Project Arthur. Does it include
That's okay.
the vision map change?
We have it here, just hang on. I'll read the ad clearly here, so there's no confusion. An ordinance amending the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan, providing for a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use maps, map 2-15 and sheet 11, changing from AGR, agricultural, rural, COM, commercial, CON, conservation lands, IL, industrial light, mixed use, ME, mixed use, and Res 3, residential 3, to 2PD, planned development on approximately 6,951.1 acres of real property located south of SR 52 and east of the Suncoast Parkway, and a text amendment creating sub-area policy FLU 7.143, Project Arthur, and a map amendment to the future land use map 2-9, adding sub-area map 2-943, Project Arthur, providing for a repealer, severability, and effective date.
Okay, that doesn't sound like it includes the vision map change.
But I would point this out. Our application that's referenced there, remember the application specifically requested the map amendments.
Don't disagree with you, but we need to fix this problem. So I think, first of all, if you want to include the vision map changes, you need to admit, the ad that's going to the board, for the board hearings, is going to have to specifically reference that change in the ad.
Right, and that's.
And in your subject lines of your agendas, you need to say, and amend the vision map, map 7-36. Now, I still think Planning Commission can take action today and recommend that those amendments be added to this amendment, but they have to be properly noticed in the ad and in the subject lines of this item.
I have no problem with the additional specificity. I do think that if a member of the public looked at any of the ads and saw the staff report, it would be clear in the staff report. But would it be more specific and a better idea? Yes, I do agree with that.
Well, Clark, whenever we're amending the comp plan, our ad says the sections of the comp plan we're amending, the maps we're amending. So I'm not sure why.
Well, at the time this was placed, the Highway Vision was on the agenda to do. That's part of the reason. It was going concurrently, and then unexpectedly, because of other things, it became
Right,
delayed.
So all
That's
I'm
the
saying
reason
is that
why.
if you're going to now put the vision map changes in with this amendment, as part of this amendment, you need to fix your ads and you need to fix your subject lines.
Right.
But, okay, so now with that clarification, I guess if the Planning Commission agrees with the original map changes, they need to make that part of their motion that be included with their recommendation.
Okay. Happy to answer any questions you all may have otherwise. Thank you very much.
Do you have any other questions, anybody?
I have a
This
couple
time?
questions. First of all, I want to say that, I was reviewing this, I assumed that the visioning for the roads was part of this. So, maybe the notice needs to be cleared up a little bit.
That's why I was
Okay.
a little shocked when it wasn't part of the subject line in the ad, but we'll fix that.
Okay. Just a couple minor questions. First off, a comment. I mean, thinking back to 2008 when the Urban Land Institute was in here doing the study and all that, this is a type of project that we envisioned back then that we would see as a result of going through that process and all that. So it's sort of really nice to see this thing come to fruition. As far as the mobility, there's a reference here about the CSX railway. I think that's a real key part to helping with the transportation issues around. But there's a reference here that, in the event there was a conversion of that rail line, is there something, I know there's been some conversations from a state level about that, but is there anything that would lead us to believe that will materialize sometime in the future?
Well, all I can say is that our client has been working with the groups that are pushing these things around the state. It's a big undertaking because you're having to deal with CSX and nothing moves quickly. And so I don't want to overstate the promise there, but I can tell you that our client's keenly interested in it. And we understand from, if nothing else, a marketing opportunity. If we had commuter rail to this site, that would be a total home run. So we're very much incentivized to continue pushing that forward.
Okay. The other thing I would add to that is I believe there's a regional transit study that's been going on, and that was one of the projects that the regional study recommended. I think it was their number 2 project. Is that right, Mr. Duffy? Generally? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a supporting system.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can we get your name and address?
My name is Ali Atifi, I'm with the MPO. So it was, they identified several supporting projects to their main catalyst project, they called it. One of the project was CSX and then 54 line. So just wanted to clarify.
But I think Mr. Hobby's correct. It's dependent on us having an agreement with CSX.
Yeah, I realize that. I just, it'd go a long way with solving a lot of the mobility issues, and I'm sure it would help out with mobility fees, I would guess, at some point. Another question I have is on the utility needs assessment. So wastewater, there's plenty of capacity for wastewater for this project, but talking about potable water, is there, has Tampa Bay Water given an additional allocation for this project, or it was already assumed and the additional of the commercial is just, insignificant or whatever with them?
Well, I believe the statement from utilities in here is that there's sufficient capacity within the overall Tampa Bay water system. When we get through the MPUD stuff, they usually have a comment period, and so to the extent they're worried about something specific to this project, we'll address it at the time.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
I'd just like to make one comment. When I was reading through this document, I became very excited about it, and I'll tell you why. There's a city in California called Davis, California. It sits outside of Sacramento. And I went up there to apply for a job once, or at least take an interview. And when I read through this document, it almost identifies that city. That's a self-contained city. For the most part, people who live there, work there. They have a great hospital. They have great recreational facilities. So I know there's some adjustments that will be made as you move forward. But that's what I see the vision about this particular project, is that it will be a benefit, definitely a benefit for Pasco County, and definitely a benefit for the employment opportunities that it will be available for people. So, and plus they live and work there. And that was the great thing about that particular community in Davis, that I appreciate it so much. Anyway, thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you. That's certainly what we're trying, well, that's what our objective is here. We've got a lot of work, and we'll be back, just so you all understand, I mean, we'll be back in front of you with the MPUD in a matter of months. That will take more time to go through, will be more substantial. Today is fairly simple because it's just a plan amendment on a couple of matters, but we'll be back with you, and we'll be working through a lot of issues. Mr. Williams and I have been talking about some concepts with schools, and I know we have a lot of work to do on that front, and we have some ideas. I think they're going to work for both of us, but there's, we will have to work through facilities issues and planning, not only when we get into the site development process, but there'll be several issues to address during the MPUD process. But we're excited. This is a big opportunity. I think everybody can see that, so we look forward to working with you all.
Just a small comment, and thank you, guys. Thank you to be in Pasco County, for invest in Pasco County and believe in this community. That is the kind of project that is going to change the entire county. These developers have been proving a huge impact at the east side of the Pasco County. Now taking care of this specific location will be huge for us. I'm really excited about this. I have been involved for a long time in this area, and I just want to say thank you for this kind of investment and believe in this area. That would be huge impact for us.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris?
So, and yes, and I apologize, I didn't file a ex parte. I'm used to my DRC procedures where I would meet and on the school board, from my school board role, meet and negotiate these type of things prior to DRC, and I wasn't at that time supposed to submit an ex parte, but we have met several times, and we're excited about this project too. It's going to be a little different for us because, as you might have seen, we may not be able to keep up with the capacity needs of what this project might demand, and so certainly the applicant's going to be formulating some different strategies that we've committed to work with the applicant on. And but just a couple things to keep in mind as we move forward. So if there is some kind of private-public partnership, or if there's a charter school, and these are comments I've already made to Clark and expressed, but if there is, for example, a charter school, some kind of charter school solution, we just have to make sure that we keep in mind that if down the road somehow the charter school fails, that there's an opportunity for the public school system to make sure that we can take over that capacity, or there's some kind of facility that we can take over that facility or take over that capacity, because what we don't want to happen is the charter school fail and it gets somehow sold as a doctor's office or whatever, and then we're stuck without not being able to provide capacity for those students. The other thing I want to also comment on, and just again for us to keep in our minds, is it's contemplated that we'll continue to try to do some co-location opportunities, and we certainly want to do that. We want to co-locate with parks, we want to co-locate with libraries, we want to co-locate with recreational facilities, but what's happened in the past sometimes is that, you know, that's all well and good, but then somehow in a couple projects we've been presented a piece of property where, okay, here's a library site, here's a school site, and there's a big wetland in between those sites. And that becomes a problem when you're trying to co-locate and make efficient use of space. And so I just say that to say that co-location is more than just plunking down two sites next to each other, as we did with the Starkey K-8 Library Cultural Center. That took a lot of work to not only sit down and plunk two pieces together, but it also had a lot of work in planning and programming those facilities to make it work. So again, those are just reminders, but thank you for the project, and we're excited to work with you in the future.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Hobby, thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah.
And is there anybody that would like to speak on this issue? Okay.
Ray Gadd, 6504 Wisteria Loop, Land O'Lakes, Florida. Just for the record, I'm not here in capacity as Deputy Superintendent of Schools, although there are schools involved in this project. I'm just going to ask for some clarification, because today there was a continuance on the visioning map, which is related to the project that I have concerns about. Like a lot of people here, I wasn't paying attention to everything in Project Arthur. Are the changes that were made in Project Arthur reflected in the vision map that was continued today, or will they be made in the future?
It's my understanding that the Project Arthur changes to the vision map are also being incorporated into the county's general vision map.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Then I would ask that you clarify for me, did any of the changes in the vision map impact anything related to the P7, which I'm concerned about today, which is the Hagman property and the future development of Wisteria?
Okay, Mr. Teffy is getting out, shaking his head no, but can you?
Yeah, if
Just
staff could clarify that, I'm good.
I do not think so, because.
Well, can we, the simplest way to answer your question is show the,
Definitively.
can we put back up the map of the Project Arthur vision map changes?
It looks to me like it's further north.
The changes to this vision map definitely will not impact the MPUD that is in the agenda.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. Gad? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then, do I have a motion?
I will move for approval.
Could you also add to your motion that they include the vision map changes in their proposed amendment and the ad for their proposed amendment?
Since you asked so nicely, yes, I would include that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before we get started, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, okay? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Across the street. This one.
Actually, she has to give everybody
Okay,
Elizabeth again.
thank you.
Erica Waylands, Planning and Development. I just want to make sure that now the Planning Commission will be now acting as the local planning agency.
Okay.
Item P7 is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 1809 Hagman, from residential 3 to PD plan development. The subject site is located in the Central Market area on the north side of Wisteria Loop, approximately 550 feet west of Land O'Lakes Boulevard. Here is an aerial view of the subject site. The Pasco County School District Office and Land O'Lakes High School is located to the north. The Pasco County Elderly Nutrition Center is located immediately adjacent to the east. There are single-family dwelling units that are located on the southern boundary of the parcel. The subject site is approximately 46 acres and is vacant. This comprehensive plan amendment has an accompanying MPD zoning amendment. The applicant is proposing to add an additional 17 dwelling units for a total of 130 single-family dwelling units. Under the current Res 3 FLU, 113 dwelling units are permitted. Here's just an inset map representing the current Res 3 FLU and the proposed PD future land use. The subject site is predominantly surrounded by Res 3, and as I said before, the Pasco County School District Office is located to the north, along as Land O'Lakes High School, and there are wetlands located to the north, south, and west. The proposed project is providing for a mix of land use intensities and open space. A sub-area policy is associated with this comprehensive plan amendment. The sub-area policy will place a density cap on the number of potential dwelling units of 130. A transportation needs assessment was not required. And with that, the Planning and Development Department recommends the LPA find this amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions? Chris?
Just refresh my memory, and I know I ought to know this already, but I always struggle with this. So when you have the future land use,
Yes.
I mean, there's not necessarily an entitlement that they get rezoned, but kind of explain that. You know what I mean? In other words, when they come in for a
different
rezoning.
future land uses, like for example, Res 3, there are 3 dwelling units that you can have per acre, depending on the developable acres. In this case, there are wetlands. So I believe there are 36 developable acres, and that's where the calculation was used for the 113 dwelling units, if that makes any sense.
Well, I guess more my question is it's not Res 3 now.
It is, the subject site is Res 3.
It's already zoned
Yeah.
Res 3?
No,
Well,
it doesn't have the zoning
Correct.
of Res 3.
And so that's really more my question.
It has a land use, is what
The
you're
la-
saying.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's
And that's-
up to 113 dwelling units depending on the zoning.
Right. Do you
If your
understand my
question is, are they entitled to zone it up to that?
That's my
No.
question.
There's no, they don't have any legal right to do
Right.
that.
You still have to go through the process and.
Right,
and-
but that's P8. P8 is their attempt to zone it.
Yes. But then they're asking for an additional 17 on top of that.
Yes, they're adding for the additional, hence why we're going to plan development for the
Right.
future land use.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
So, yeah, I do have a question. First, I want to disclose that I reached out to Mr. Gadd this morning to chat with him about this project and particularly the road issue there. Wisteria Loop, I know it's very close, which he raised the concern earlier about the visioning that's there. So my question is, Wisteria Loop what is that visioned to be in the future?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is a vision collector for Wisteria Loop.
A collector?
Yes.
So, I'm going to raise a question about that because I don't really see that being a collector road, especially with Tower Road to the north, or I'm sorry, to be to the south of there. It seems to me like that area, if it's going to be a residential usage going forward, it certainly is now, going forward, then that status should be shifted down to Tower Road. So, I mean, I know the two issues are not necessarily tied together, but it's a concern that I think if we addressed it now, would alleviate a lot of the concerns that some of the residents have. So I'll make that comment. Maybe through the presentations, we can maybe explore that a little bit more.
Okay. So is there anyone here for the applicant? Anyone else for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, Clark Hobby again. We had discussed and I had requested some extra time to do a joint presentation on this and the rezoning, and I thought what we might do is rather than get started on ours now, but maybe we would have zoning staff do their presentation on that, and then we can start our presentation, and then the members of the public could speak to both of them if that meets with the Planning Commission's approval.
That makes sense to me.
Tammy Snyder, current planning. Hagman MPUD, PDD 197337. Up. Is that better? All right, here's the location map. I almost want to say ditto. She did a great job on her presentation. And here's the current zoning districts. And we have the future land use, Res 3 all around, ROR up on the road. Proposed is a rezoning from AR1, agricultural residential, to an MPUD to allow 130 single-family detached residences on approximately 46.767 acres. The minimum lot size proposed is 40 feet wide by 100 feet deep. There's their master plan. Presently, the subject site is unimproved. The applicant is also seeking the corresponding plan amendment, CPAL 1809, for a change in the future land use from Res 3 to PD. Vehicular interconnects to abutting properties are not feasible for this project, as there is a wetland along the east boundary, a Pasco County school site to the north, and a Pasco County Senior Service Center to the east. There is, however, a proposed pedestrian bicycle access to the school site to the north, pending Pasco County School Board approval. The applicant developer shall improve Wisteria Loop from the project's southwest property line east to US 41 to current county standards. And here is a aerial showing the wetlands, the school site, the Pasco County Senior Service site on the east.
proposed request is consistent with the Pasco County Land Development Code, Chapter 400, the MPUD Plan Master Unit Development Section, and with the applicable provisions of the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan. And then we have some snapshots, field review of Wisteria Loop. And there's some access management analysis, some good stuff there. Existing drainage showing how the drainage actually goes. A little hard to see. And some proposed entrance buffer details. PDD recommends approval to the BCC with conditions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So you talked about, and I don't know, maybe the applicant will talk about this, but you mentioned improving Wisteria Loop to county standards. So what does that look like?
Bring the expert up for you.
Hassan Khalil, current planning with the Planning and Development Department. So they did a substandard road review. They found that the road is deficient, heading west from US 41 and continuing west. The development agreed to improve the road to county standards, which is 22 foot wide. Currently, it's about, if I'm not mistaken, sections of it 18 foot, some less, some more. But it's in pretty poor shape. Those pictures, those were taken by me, so I went out there and looked at it. The road does look bad. There is actually, you can't tell too much, but there's a pretty steep grade as you come up towards 41. So including improvements to the width of the road, resurfacing it, right? They're also going to improve that severe drop-off that you have from 41. So the cars that are heading east on Wisteria Loop, they are not parked at a steep angle and then trying to negotiate the traffic to their left side. So the grade will be reduced, so it's a much gentler grade. It will be a better access. Now the improvement is gonna start from 41 all the way to the western edge of their property. That's the section of the roadway that they're gonna be improving. They will be doing a little bit more presentation to show you exactly what improvements they're doing, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, I was curious about the width. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for me?
No, I don't think so. Mr. Hobby?
Clark Hobby, Hobby and Hobby PA, again for the record. I'll try to speak up because I think now some of the folks in the back can't hear very well.
I can turn up the mics.
Cora Lynn's going to be bringing up a series of exhibits, if we can go to Exhibit 1. I have with me today, and I am representing Pulte Homes, the applicant today on this project, which is the contract purchaser and proposed developer. I have with me Steve Henry, who most of you all know is a transportation engineer from Links & Associates. I have Brian Surak, who's the project civil engineer with Clearview Land Design. Kelly Love, who's the planner at Clearview Land Design. And lastly, you'll hear from Joel Tu, who's an attorney who most of you all know, who represents the landowner, Bob Hagman. As you've heard about this project, the proposal is a plan amendment change to PD and a corresponding zoning change to MPUD. The purpose of which is to create a 130-unit gated/walled community. The proposed plan amendment is only a proposed increase in 17 units, the purpose of which is even with Res 3, because of the calculation of densities under the comp plan now and the amount of wetlands on site, we really couldn't get to the Res 3 density level under the current Res 3. And so if you're going to do a subdivision and you know the lots will fit and the comp plan doesn't fit, you need a few more. This was a simple way to do it without going to Res 6 or a higher future land use that might portend negative things for the rest of the community. So as most of you all know, this area along 41 is in an area that's been suburbanizing for many years. It's part of the central market area. It's in close proximity to utilities, major roadway infrastructure on Land O'Lakes Boulevard /41. And there are numerous MPUDs that have been approved in this area since 2000. And just in the last couple of years, I was involved in the 2 projects that are now where the Copper Spring community is being built that were known then as Lester Dairy MPUD and FCI MPUD, and both of which have several hundred units and are substantially larger than this project. We've had a good amount of interaction with the community on this project, including a community meeting, and I've met with a couple of the community leaders you're likely to hear from today several times, and we've done our level best to try to address their concerns. And as I go through my presentation, I'm going to try to give you a few things that we've done to show you in the conditions and other things that we're doing to try to make sure that this project does not detract from their community and isn't inconsistent with the plan for this area as the county has adopted for many years. So the first thing I wanted to show you is a few slides here, and I'm going to ask Cora Lynn to move through this in just a little bit. But this area, this is the 2000 comp plan, and this whole area is planned for Res 3. So Cora Lynn, you can go to the next one. Just the next slide, I mean. Next page, I mean. No, just the next page.
There's another page?
Yeah, there's 8 of them.
Oh.
Okay. This is the 2025, when the county updated the comp plan 2006 and 7. The area remained primarily Res 3 throughout this area. There is some Res 6 on either side, and the area down in here was still being shown as Res 3, where the Bexley South and Bexley North MPUDs were approved. Go to the next slide. And in this period of time, the county started to pick up vision map changes for this area. And at least as of 2006, the county had identified the crossing for Bexley across the agricultural crossing on the railroad, and then Wisteria Loop as part of the highway vision map. Next slide. And so now you can see this is the condition. You got the crossing there, and then the road splitting down here after you get across Bexley with Wisteria up here, and then running ultimately down here to a yet-to-be-named road that goes to Tower. And just incidentally, I would tell the Planning Commission, I don't think our client has any objection to removing Wisteria from the highway vision map. That as long as there's a public roadway there, we're fine with that. We also agree it's pretty unlikely because of the proximity of this intersection right here to the light up at Gator Lane where the schools are and Wilderness Lake Preserve is. It's very unlikely that there'll ever be a signal there that DOT would approve, so we think the functionality of that roadway is something left to be desired. Next slide, please. So after the 2006 and 7 comp plan stuff, then the county went through this ULI visioning process, and then Mr. Garing came in and helped us create market areas for the county. This property is in Market Area 3, which is known as the suburban market area. And so all of the comp plan policies basically tell us that we're supposed to be encouraging suburban form development in the central part of the county, including this project. Next one. And at the same time, when the 2006-7 comp plan was adopted, the county created these rural areas, okay? As you can see, this property is not and has never been part of any of the protected rural areas, okay? Next slide. And then you can see this is an even more updated map that's showing the Res 3 in this area, and now you're seeing the very large planned development down here. That's the Bexley South, Bexley North MPUD. And then this is the area right here that says AGR, which if the plan amendment you just heard on the northerly-most Bexley property is approved, this would all be planned development. So you'd have 15,000 acres of planned development, very large projects lying in close proximity to this area to the west. Next slide. And we'll be done with that exhibit. And then lastly, I just wanted to emphasize, and this map shows you, and you really don't need me highlighting this, that there are a very large number of MPUDs that have been approved along this corridor since about 2000. So I know some of the neighbors you're likely to hear from some of them own large tracts. Some of them are beautiful tracts, and we don't disagree with that. And I think that they were thinking maybe that this area was going to be a rural area or remain rural for a long period of time. And I can just tell you, having gone through all of the heartache of the 2006-07 comp plan changes, 2 ULI panels, the adoption of the market areas, and all the work we've done over the last 12 or 15 years, this area has never been planned for anything but suburban form residential development at roughly Res 3. It never has been even the discussion of being in a so-called rural area or told that we're going to discourage development in the area. The next thing we heard from residents again and again is that folks are worried about traffic in this area, and I think they're really worried that it's not just about our stretch of Wisteria, and all of Wisteria right now really is not in great shape, but they're worried that our residents, even after we take our section of Wisteria to a standard condition, instead of turning left and going straight out to 41 to go south, are for some reason going to go 1.5 miles to the right through their neighborhood on a section of road that is clearly substandard. That really defies common sense. The more improvements that people make on a substandard road, the more likely you are to draw more traffic to it. Folks want to drive on nice roads. If we repave our section of the road, we widen it, and we reduce that grade transition, and you'll hear more about that in just a sec, we believe our folks will go out that way, and the traffic studies support that. Several of the folks that we spoke to were very worried about people, again, turning right out of the subdivision, and they kept telling us that you can't get out on 41 rush hour in the morning. It's impossible. And this is a little bit unusual, but Corlin, if we can go to Exhibit 2, I may or may not play both of these, but I thought it would be instructive for the Planning Commission to see this video. This video is taken at 7:56 a.m. Well,
I know, I don't.
it got rendered sideways. The gist of this video is a minute long. It was taken during a school day, and after the traffic clears out from the signal, when it turns, in 1 minute, 2 cars pass. 2 cars in 1 minute. I waited for the next signal at 7:59, and 12 cars passed in 1 minute and 45 seconds. Suffice to say, there is plenty of time for folks to pull out on 41 here, and we have a transportation study that backs all that up, but I want to see it myself, and I took the videos, and they're there in the record if anyone needs to see that. There is no traffic problem at 41 in Wisteria, and when we take this road to a standard condition and smooth the grade out, there absolutely will not be any traffic problem, okay? And our transportation engineer will speak in a few minutes about that. The next concern you heard at the community meeting was a lot of the residents in the area live on a lake that really flooded and came up last year. As you all know, we had a very, very wet summer, and there's an outfall on both the west and the east side of this property, but it doesn't go through the property. When we get into engineering and site planning for the property, we're going to be very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to flood the people downstream. We can't change the volume or rate of discharge, and our engineer will give you more information about that, but suffice to say, it is extremely unlikely that we could have any impact on anyone down in the lake, because they're flowing up past our site, and we're discharging into the wetland system that they discharge into. Okay, the next thing we heard is a lot of the residents were worried about quality of life in general, and they thought that the subdivision itself might somehow be unsightly or detract from property values. Corlin, we can go to Exhibit 4. So we worked with several members of the community leaders, And we create a series of conditions that reflect in the MPUD and require us to make the improvements you're going to see on this slide and the next slide. And what you're seeing here is, well, I'm not even going to turn this thing on. It's a walled community with extensive plantings on the outside and the inside, but a lot on the outside, so that when folks turn on Wisteria from 41, it's not a blighted, ugly subdivision in any way. It's going to be a beautiful thing for the subdivision. Corlin, if we can go to the next one, that'd be Exhibit 5. Pulte Homes has built other similar communities to this, and what you're going to see on this slide, this is actually what the entrance is going to look like. I mean, we know that. We have the renderings. These are the plantings we're going to do, and the conditions require the brick pavers, accent lighting, the wall you're seeing there, and all the landscaping. That's what we're going to build. So I defy anyone to tell me how building that type of community is somehow going to detract from your area. But again, we want to be good neighbors, and we worked with the community to try to make this a good project. Next, I'm going to ask Kelly Love to come up from Clearview Land Design and talk a little bit about the specifics of the buffering and landscaping and what we've done that far exceeds the code. So, Corlin, if we can go to Exhibit 6.
Hello, Kelly Love, 1213 East 6th Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33605. I can start. Go. All right. Tammy and Clark both discussed this a little bit, but sometimes if you have the exhibit in front of you, we made some decisions in the design to try and make it a quality project, one that won't detract from the neighborhood. As you can see, the west, the north, and the east side pretty much have wetlands, heavily vegetated. We have one loop road throughout the community that the 130 homes will be around. To the northeast is where the neighborhood park will be, the required land development code requirement for a amenity up in that area. Certainly it's not going to impact any of the neighbors if we have kids out there or there's no residential right around it. To the east is the senior center. There is a fence along the eastern border with the senior center. We plan to keep the heavily vegetated area along that fence. They have vegetation. We have vegetation. Essentially, neither one probably wants to look at each other, so we're going to keep as much of that as possible. For the entrance feature, you saw the pond in the middle. So even for the neighbors who live in that area, if they see the community when the gates open, there's going to be a pond right in front of the entrance. And so for the matrix, we've gone above and beyond in some of our landscape requirements. There is a requirement of dedication of road for Wisteria Loop. Typically, a minimum buffer of 10 feet is required if we give right-of-way. We're going to be giving 20-feet buffer. The size and heights of all the requirements of the landscaping in front are going to be increased in caliber and height. There's going to be double the amount of ground coverage that's usually required compared to what the code requires. The 6-foot solid concrete wall will have decorative columns. Typically what you would see and is allowed by code is something like an aluminum or a PVC fence. They're going to be upgrading that. And as Clark mentioned, the entrance feature is really going to be a high-quality product, and it's something that we think the community will appreciate having it as they drive by.
I'm going to skip drainage, and we can answer questions about that, but in the interest of time, just two quick folks. Steve Henry is going to explain the substandard road improvements, because I think you all want to know about that.
Okay.
And then Mr. Tu needs to just say a word or two.
Thank you.
We'll try to move it along.
I'm just going to do substandard.
Okay.
Steve Henry, Links and Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa, 33607. Real quick, just we did both a timing and phasing analysis and access management analysis. Based on the timing and phasing, US 41 will operate within the adopted VC ratio at build-out of the project with the project. From an access management standpoint, we looked at the access to Wisteria Loop. We also looked at Wisteria Loop in 41. Both of those will operate within the delay and VC criteria of the code. As far as substandard road, this graphic here shows the limits of the improvements that we're doing. So we're going from US 41 to the western boundary of the property. that we'll be doing the improvements. You can go to the next slide. Now, this graphically shows the improvements that we're going to do. I'm not sure how to work this thing, but see if I can do this.
That won't work on.
Oh, okay. All right, so basically, what's out there today is an 18-foot roadway. What we're doing is making it 22 feet of pavement along with stabilized shoulders and ditches along the roadway. So basically bringing it up to county standard for that 2,000-foot length of the roadway. Go to the next one. In addition to improving, that's kind of north is to the left, but in addition to improving Wisteria Loop, what we're also doing is adding a southbound right turn lane on US 41 at Wisteria Loop to allow people to get off of 41 to make that right onto Wisteria Loop. Go to the next slide. The other thing that had come up was the grade going from Wisteria Loop up to 41. And this is kind of a graphic that just picture that just shows, you can see the grade there. But the next slide. This shows the improvement that we're doing. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see that the dashed line is the existing grade, and it's about 6.5% going from Wisteria Loop up to 41. The red shows what we're doing is we're going to make it about 3.5%, less than 3.5%. So basically cutting it in half and making that a much smoother transition from Wisteria Loop up to 41 to make it a little bit better from a traffic circulation standpoint. So that concludes my presentation, unless you've got any questions.
Any questions from anybody?
I assume, Steve, sorry, I assume there's right-of-way. There's already existing
Correct.
right-of-way.
There's 60 to 70 feet of right-of-way out there to be able to do the improvement. Yeah.
And again, I'll just, Joel too represents the landowner and wanted to have a word or two. Thank you very much.
Joe?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Joel Tu and Associates, Palm Harbor, Florida. I am transactional and land use legal counsel for the Hagman family. This property has been in the family since 1955, so more than 70 years. It was part of the original homestead. And they have a market rate contract with Pulte Homes to acquire it, which has a closing contingent only upon the plan amendment and the MPUD approval. So obviously the family has a serious vested interest in ultimately disposing of this family asset that they've had in the family for many years. Just a few bullet points on behalf of the property owner to make us a party of interest in the unlikely and hopeful not event that Pulte doesn't close. We still have the asset, so it's important to us. We obviously are in this US 41 corridor that's been designated part of the central market area. And if there's one thing that's been beat in my head as a land use attorney for the last 20 years in Pasco County, it's that the comprehensive plan and these market designations mean something. They're studied, they're imposed for a reason. We are all told to bring in clients and developers and property owners who are mindful of what that plan says and what those market areas are. So we strive to not bring in projects that are outside those intended development areas, and we're encouraged to, in fact, bring the projects which are. This one obviously is. To Clark's point, we're bringing you something that is in the bullseye. It has been contemplated for nearly 20 years now for exactly this type of suburban development. Moreover, this particular property is immediately adjacent to the high school and the school board's administrative complex. That hasn't been mentioned, but that can't go unnoticed. We have an adjacent high-intensity use. Therefore, a suburban development of this sort is entirely appropriate as a transition between that lake area to the south and that very intense school use to the north. I don't know what else we really could be expected to do with this property other than this, and frankly, I think it is fortunate and admirable that Pulte has agreed to impose these additional conditions to create what appears to us to actually be a very superior design for this entrance, this enhanced landscape buffer and security wall on the front, to make these substantial improvements all the way to our west property line, although their entrance is substantially east of that. Clearly, our new residents are going to go from our entrance to 41 to go wherever they're going. There isn't any logical debate about that in our opinion. So we are doing exactly what the county, ULI, the market areas dictated us we should do. We're completely surrounded by a sea of Res 3, except that we also have ROR adjacent to us on the northeast corner. So we have a sea of ROR and Res 3. We're only asking to do that which the comp plan said would be appropriate in this area. Most importantly, your staff has found on both the plan amendment and the MPUD zoning, they have made a technical expert finding of consistency with the comp plan and compatibility with surrounding uses. So we have met the technical requirement to show that we are entitled to this use, in my opinion. I understand that the county attorney has a slightly different opinion as to at what point you're entitled to your zoning, but I respectfully submit that in a quasi-judicial proceeding, which requires competent substantial evidence, that the evidence will be that this PD plan amendment and certainly the MPUD zoning is appropriate and should be approved. And as the landowner, obviously, we have to support that position. For what it's worth, I had a brief discussion with Mr. Gadd a few moments ago, and getting to Mr. Cox's point, the Hagman family wholeheartedly agrees that there is no logical reason in our mind why Wisteria Loop must be designated as a collector on the Vision roadway map. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't appear particularly prudent. I think our future residents would be very happy if it weren't a collector. They're going to share exactly the same concerns ultimately that the existing residents have now. There's going to be an identity of interest on that point. And what Wisteria Loop really needs to be is it needs to be the type of road that Pulte has agreed to upgrade to our western boundary. Hopefully, as the properties west of us come in, you and the commission would require them to continue that improvement process so that as much of that road can be brought up to county standard as possible. But that's really what that roadway needs to be. It really doesn't need to be a cut through for these massive planned development projects over on the Bexley Ranch that are coming down the road. There certainly are other ways to handle that through Ridge Road, Tower Road, the Roaches Run connection north of this, and I believe that can be satisfied. So because it's going to become an issue on this approval, the Hagman family strongly urges you and the county commission to think seriously about changing that designation. We're fortunate that that's coming through at the same time as it's turned out. So let's see if we couldn't make that happen. And with that said, we just greatly encourage you, the family does, to allow it to achieve that which the family's waited 70 years for, which is a reasonable disposition of the family-owned asset that passed down to the current heirs from the prior estate. And we hope you can support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any questions, by the way, for Joel? No?
Just before the public speaks, I want to be clear about the Wisteria Loop issue. The vision map was going to be on the agenda today, but it obviously got continued. If the planning commission, residents, whoever want Wisteria Loop removed from the vision map, the appropriate time to do that would be at the next that next planning commission meeting, where that specific map will be before you and you can take action on the map. I don't think that's action that you can take today.
I get that, and I wanted to raise it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I won't be at the next meeting, so I won't be able to say that. But
I share that concern too, Mike.
Yeah, well, I'm quite sure that other members will carry that along at the next meeting. But one thing is you're looking at this vision map, you're going to be up at the 30,000-foot viewpoint initially. And unless you really drill down into, a single road like we're doing today, then maybe some of these roads are going to get lost in that 30,000-foot view level. So, I would certainly encourage prior to that the staff take a very hard look at that, because and not just for this particular road, but I'm sure if there's one, there's others, and I'd hate to see us creating more issues down the road, but this one particularly sticks out, and if we can prevent this particular road to becoming a problem now, we should do that.
Roberto, anything? Anything down here? Okay. So is there anybody who would like to speak? You look familiar.
Ray Gadd, 6504 Wisteria Loop. If I may, I'd like to enter these into the record.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion to receive and file, and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And also, in order to address Mr. Cox's issues, I'd like for you to give me a little latitude on time. I don't need much, maybe a minute or two.
This depends, if you're nice.
I intend to be very nice. Thank you. But I also have to address the visioning issue, which was continued today, and we are under the assumption that it was going to be heard today. If you look at the pictures I've sent you, you'll see the first picture is just simply a kind of a look at what our neighborhood looks like. You know, and this is a country lane that we live on. If you turn the next few pages, you'll see better pictures than Essen showed you up here on the screen, and you'll actually see what Wisteria Loop looks like. You'll see the potholes, you'll see the water covering the road, you'll see how narrow the road is, and I think you'll get a pretty good idea that this road is in terrible shape. So once you get past the roads, then you'll see a whole selection of pictures that kind of just show you the character of this neighborhood. And I don't want to insult this body by suggesting that in order to make a community and a developer happy, that you should vote a certain way on the vision map. What I want to do is appeal to the logic that this group might apply to that vision map. And let me give you a little history lesson. Wisteria Loop going east used to hit 41, and you could go left or right. You could cross the median and go left or right. But then
So Ray, can I just make a suggestion?
Uh-huh.
You have limited time, okay, and so I've already said that they can't take action on Wisteria vision map today.
Uh-huh.
So rather than go into all the reasons why you want Wisteria removed from the vision map, could you get to the comments on the MPD itself, which is what is before us today and they're taking action on?
Is that a suggestion or a have to?
Well, I think you're going to run out of time, and,
Okay.
and he's told you got 3 minutes. I'm concerned that you're going to.
Well, I thought he said he was giving me a little latitude if I was nice.
I said you might have 4.
But,
I'll take 4.
And I'm okay with giving you latitude, but I thought you were going to talk about the MPUD.
Okay.
Okay.
But you're not
and-
the one that gives me latitude, the commission does.
But we're, I think the point he's trying to make is, I think it's obvious to me that
I'm gonna
I think
get to
many
the
of the members
MPP.
here are predisposed to take action on that Wisteria Loop situation.
But that would be at the next planning commission
That
meeting.
would be at the next meeting.
And you're going to have you could have a full presentation on that at the next meeting. So
Okay.
I just hate to see you run out of time when we're here to talk
You're
about the
gonna be arguing
MPD.
for something that you don't have to argue for.
By the way, you're out of time, so thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Given all of that, I am concerned, though, because Mr. Cox says he's not going to be here. I just want to make it clear that none of my neighbors, contrary to what might have been implied, think that this Pulte development is ugly or detracts from the neighborhood. We're fine with the way that development looks. Pulte Development has been really good working with us on the landscape buffers and all those kinds of things. What my neighbors have objected to is that this is a substandard road. It has pre-existing conditions that are bad. And when they look out into the future, what they see is additional development going west that will feed on to Wisteria Loop. And what we continually hear when we meet with planning staff is that there's nothing that you can do about the future of Wisteria Loop because there aren't many crossings that go across railroad tracks. And my concern there is that may be true, but it's important that we do what's right in this particular scenario as opposed to what's easy. And we have a situation right now where, due to the DOT, everybody that leaves Wisteria Loop has to make a right turn. And so I am very concerned in the future, if we have continued development next to Pulte, which we will, going west, that everything that is Bexley development will come down Wisteria Loop, hit 41, and make a right turn. And the logic of that defies explanation when Tower Road is a quarter mile down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Whoa, we got a special sound for you.
Those are the extra minute.
Okay.
First of all, I have something to enter, or for your viewing from one of the people that cannot speak.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You give us your name and address, please.
Certainly. It's Vicky Wall, and I live at 19701 Bexley Road, Land O'Lakes, Florida. My concerns are with compatibility to the neighborhood. We have pictures that depict what the neighborhood actually looks like. As Ray has some stills, we have them up.
You talking about referencing these pictures?
Yes. Well, no, they're different. They're
Okay.
different. But while they're working on that, what I want to say is in our neighborhood currently, the lots average 200 to 300 feet in width. And the projection, of course, of these is 40-foot lots at best. All of the properties average out well over 2 acres that are already in that area. And we pride ourselves in our neighborhood, and we think it brings big value, not only to the county, but to the tax revenue. And we do have concerns that when we start putting planned units of smaller housing, that end result, it will impact what we have there now and have had for 50-plus years. The other thing I'd like to say as far as, yes, there are a lot of developments that have been approved since 2000, but none of them, to my knowledge, impacted directly a neighborhood. Most of the ones that came about, like Asbel, Tierra del Sol, Lake Shore, Connerton, Cypress Preserves, Wilderness Lakes, Suncoast Lakes, Suncoast Meadows, Concord, Baldemero, and Oakstead, all come onto big roads, and those were pastures. They were not placed in the center of a neighborhood. And this is an example of what we have now. Are those able to move? You can just flip through them. These are what our area looks like currently throughout the neighborhood. And our concern is to keep our neighborhood as it is. That's my concern.
Okay.
I was going to say, if we can just continue to put that up and someone else can see.
Chairman, that was an unsigned letter, by the way. I'd like to point that out. The letter, there's no signature to it.
My name's Meekum.
Okay. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Excuse me.
Your name and address?
My name's Meekum, William A., 19627 DeWitt Drive. Got me? Just like what they're saying, we've had numerous from other sides on our side mentioning about the substandard roads. What we have isn't even a county road. And we've got on your map listings, it's called a corridor or a collector, but that doesn't exist. You've seen pictures up there. Our little streets aren't designed for an extra 200 or plus cars to drive in and out in the mornings and evenings. Years ago, at one of the sermons my preacher preached at, he said people's opinions and opinions of themselves vary. And that he said you can stand in the garage all day long. It doesn't make you a car. The development is, with one of the words that was used, predicated on the road being called a collector road. They're going to develop and maintain from their property line up to 41. But that's not going to help the rest of us. If you put 200 cars out there in the morning, even though it was mentioned that there weren't but 1 or 2 cars go by in a minute, 200 cars is going to make a difference. Before I'd retired, one of my projects was over on 19. We were doing a road widening project, took a few months, in Pasco. Right beside us was a senior center. And one of the things we had to maintain was road clearance if there was a medical emergency for a heart patient or oxygen deprived or whatever the issue was. The paramedics and the response vehicles had to be able to get in there in a timely manner. If you've got that little road where we can only turn right, as was mentioned, blocked up with everybody trying to get out in the morning, they're not going to be able to access the response. The first responders aren't going to be able to get to the senior center. They're going to be blocked out there. Years ago, we could pull up to 41 and go left or right. All that was taken away when 41 was widened. All we can do now is turn right. If you have to go north, you turn right, go down a half a mile to a U-turn, and then you try to pull out in traffic that's going the other way. So for all this to pass and for not to have an issue, if our road was developed to just a minimum county road, it's not, right now, if 2 cars come, somebody has to pull on the shoulder of the road to let the other vehicle go by. If you have 2 trucks, somebody's going to pull off the shoulder and stop. You can't drive 2 vehicles. If I drive my RV up there and I pull off to the shoulder, it's 6 inches. It'll sink because it's so soft. And what was mentioned from the developer was that the shoulder would be maintained and taken care of. Well, that's great for that stretch of road. But what about when you get beyond that? 200 cars are going to pull out and go somewhere. If they can't get up on 41, it's blinking. If they can't get up on 41, they're going to turn right and go on the other way. They've got no choice. They're trying to get to work on time.
Okay.
So my whole issue, if you put a stoplight up there, and if it was a regular intersection where you could pull left or right, that would slow down the amount of traffic that you have to fight into. But if with no stoplight, and they keep saying there's no provisions for it, but with no stoplight, there's not going to be a smooth flow of traffic. You're going to be backed up. You can't get away from it.
All right. Thank you.
Time's up.
Good afternoon. My name's Charlene Roush. I live at 6749 Lake Irene Drive in Land O'Lakes, C463. My biggest concern is, number one, the impact on schools. I've retired after 38 years of teaching in Pinellas County. You're adding more students. Land O'Lakes High School is already overcrowded. A lot of the other schools within that area are already overcrowded. You're impacting them even more, even with the traffic. When you look at usable land, it starts off with almost 50 acres. By the time they talk about the wetlands, and then you have a 7-acre pond, you're down to 27, 28 acres. You do a Res 3 on 27, 28 acres, that's a lot less than 130 homes. So however you come up with usable land really concerns me. Yes, the traffic is an issue, but you need to look at the rest of what, is it comparable with the rest of the neighborhood? You spoke earlier with Oakstead, and you passed that because it was comparable. Is this development comparable with the rest of the neighborhood? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Steve Bush. I live at 6730 Wisteria Loop in Land Lakes. I live directly across from where this subdivision is going to be put, and it concerns me considerably because, number one, my value of my property, I feel, is going to probably get devaluated. I have about 3 acres of land there, and most of the other houses on the block are all large acres and houses similar to mine. And when I moved in there in 1998, I was under the impression it was just one house per acre, and I guess it has changed since then with a new ruling, I guess, in 2005 or whatever. So I am very much concerned. I'm concerned about the traffic going out there. I wait right now, try to get out into 41 for quite some time, and I'm the only one there a lot of times. There's maybe 2 or 3 cars, but I have to sit there for a long time waiting for that light to change down there by the high school. And it didn't used to be that way. Of course, things are changing, I know. The other thing I'm concerned about with is the flooding. This last few years, I've had water come up almost to my house in the backyard. There is a drainage ditch about 200 feet from my house that leaves the lake, drains from the lake, out underneath Wisteria Loop to the side of the property where this proposed development is at. And then it drains into the swamp. Now, if that whole 50 acres up there where they're going to put the development is going to be houses and roads, it's not going to absorb the water like it used to. So therefore, there's going to be more water that's going to be running off into the drainage area, the swamp area where the lake is draining. The lake isn't going to drain anymore. If the lake doesn't drain anymore, then we're all going to have a lot of flooding going on. So I think people need to take a look at that, and not from 30,000 feet like you were saying. So those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you very much.
Same doc. Did you guys catch that?
I'm sorry?
These are before and after pictures of what that gentleman was just speaking about. That's, I guess, I'm going to assume before.
Normal.
Normal, and this is, well, if I can get to it.
My name is George Wall. I live at 19701 Bexley. I have for 45 years, 44 and some change. I have a little history with that area, so I've witnessed flooding, like she just brought up. I also witnessed the incline coming up off of 41, coming into Wisteria. The DOT had some issues with that several times and had to rework it to get it right to keep our vehicles from bottoming out. So hopefully this last time they'll get it right. My main issue that I have right now is flooding. I've witnessed flooding many, many times in our area. Now, what's flooding? When I go down Bexley Road and I have a hard time navigating my car because the water has superseded the banks of that area. Worse yet, we've had to park our vehicles and bring a truck up that has a 4-wheel capacity or a little elevated in order to get through that area to get the water, to navigate the water. It happens several times. You know, one of the things that concerned me was wetlands too. Everybody talks about, I used to hunt and fish in this area, so I got a good idea what happens there. That area that they have targeted for development, and they acknowledge 3 sides are wetlands. That water, it comes from the high school, it comes from Wisteria Lake, drains under an area that my neighbor was just talking about. It goes into a swamp. Well, the swamp then meanders underneath Bexley and circumvents and goes back around into another area of Bexley. Well, what happens, it slows the water flow down. If the ditches aren't maintained, and they haven't been just recently, there was some effort placed in that area, it starts backing up. Yes, the water coming off of that retention area that they proposed to put in there is also a concern for me because retention ponds are not kept up the way they should be. The proper way to do the retention ponds, not to knock the cattails down because that settles to the bottom of the retention pond. That affects the sensitivity of being able to drain that part. The proper maintenance means you have to go in there and actually remove the sand and renegotiate that and put that back in there. I don't know if you guys have seen, I've never seen that happen before. So I don't feel good about that. So now where does that water go when it supersedes capacity of the retention pond? It goes into the area that we already have flooding. We need to take a hard look at that because it affects all of us. It's not like I'm not against them selling the property. They deserve it. They're good friends and been there forever in their family. So I know the people that own this property. And I just think the land use, when they start looking at a Res 3, Res 6, it just blows me away because that's not compatible with what's there. I think the additional traffic that's going to happen there is going to affect a lot of people, and That's pretty much what I got to say. I touched on everything, I think, in 3 minutes.
Very good job.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I need to be sworn in.
Oh, you didn't swear in?
I hate it.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I do. Chris Nacco, as a private citizen, 18865 State Road 54. So I know I will be on that clock. I promise I won't go over. But a couple things, just very quickly, and I appreciate staff has been phenomenal. I give credit where credit's due. They will work with us, they'll talk with us. I want to give Clark thank you, and to our community. I mean, these are good people. And so the one thing I want to thank the board, because you guys brought up some good points too, but very quickly, in a perfect world, when you looked at it, that property to the east, if they had bought a piece of land right there, if it had been available and if the cost was right, and, you know, yeah, because you would have done like every other community you heard about, Asbel and everywhere else. They buy a piece of land, they go straight out to 41, they wouldn't have to go to Wisteria, and this probably would have went through with nobody being here. But the property wasn't available, or it was too much, it was cost effective. So where we are is that they came down, they're coming down south, going to Wisteria, which will go out to 41. So pretty much like all the other communities, they're creating it's going to basically be their driveway into their community. So my biggest concern goes back to, I've heard the first time today, suburbanization of this. Well, if you have suburbanization in suburbs, you have sidewalks, and you have wider roads. And to call that a country road, I give Ray credit. It's more like a beat-up alley that has potholes and floods. I mean, so that's my biggest concern. And we'll be back for the next meeting. I got a minute 35, so I can keep going. But I'll be back in that next meeting, and the fact that when we talk about building out in the future, that's my concern. My concern are these developments, because there are a lot of land out there. Those maps that show all that land, there's a lot. At the same time, is that parking lot that was in that Arthur project you showed is a million times better than that road that's going to handle all those cars. So that is what I think going forward, we will be at that next meeting, because when we start talking about suburbanization of that community, we have to remember that projects keep building out, and they will build out in that area, which is, you know, growth is going to come. No matter what happens, growth, and a lot of times growth is a good thing, but when it's done the right way. And that's what we want to make sure, those concerns, issues going forward, don't fall on deaf ears. That the fact that when people say, no, it's not going to impact you, it absolutely will impact you. Because State Road 41 is already being overwhelmed, especially, you can't get out of Asbel right now. If you're up at Asbel at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you're backed up. You're backed up from State Road 54 all the way up to the racetrack in the morning on 41. That's over 2 miles that people are waiting. So those are the type of things. When we plan out growth, let's plan out, so put the roads first as the priority. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, before you step away. So specifically, what is your thought and recommendation in regard to the road? Are you
My
concerned that it
goal is
being a collector
remove
road?
it from the long-term highway plan and
Take it out as a collector road?
take it out as a collector road. Yes, sir.
Okay, and that would solve your issue?
That would serve my issue going forward, and then especially that Arthur project, there's land to the north. It's going to eventually have to connect, and maybe that Ridge Road extension from the Suncoast to 41 will be the place where all the cars, all the road, everything goes towards. But if that was Wisteria Loop, because everybody also forgot Tower Road's going to connect through. Tower Road's going to eventually, hopefully, go underneath the Suncoast Expressway. So people will go westbound on Wisteria, because they're not going to go out to 41, go down the Tower, and then make a right again. People are going to, and what they're going to do is not even people from this community, other people are going to come north, coming from the north, they're going to come down 41, they're going to make a right on Wisteria, which is westbound, take Wisteria down to Tower, and then take Tower all the way through. So that's where we're going to see in the long run. You talk about the amount of cars, it may not be from this community, but it's going to be from the other communities that are going to try to say, well, cut down Wisteria to Tower, and then you go through.
Okay, any
All
other
right.
questions up here?
Good. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
I have a question. Well, they're not
Yeah.
done. I'll wait till the public comment's done.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jason Meekum. I live on 19641 DeWitt Drive. This is a a big responsibility that you guys have, and I'm a little, it's interesting to me that some of this is anecdotal evidence that you have to kind of sift through and look at, and you're seeing videos of no traffic, and you're hearing stories of there's tons of traffic, and that's interesting to me as just a civilian. Just an interactive portion of the meeting. Could I get a raise of hands for everybody who owns property in the neighborhood? So we're not all family, we're not related, we're not working together, we're not in businesses. These are just concerned homeowners, property owners, that have taken time out to come today. I wanted to point one other thing regarding the flooding. There's a picture in here of the track you were sort of looking at. There's a couple of those. Did you notice the
Yes,
school track?
yes.
These pictures were posted by the principal at Land O'Lakes High School. You guys heard about the benefit of having this development right next to the high school and the administrative buildings. The principal posted these pictures of the track activities being canceled because of flooding. You're putting a pretty big development into this one little footprint. There's some other pictures here that we've done. We're amateur sleuths here, pulling up pictures of floodplains and FEMA maps. You'll notice there's a great big empty spot where this development's going to go. All of that water has to go somewhere. And I would say that a lot of the concern that we have, aside from everything else that you've heard and a little bit about flooding, is that water has to go somewhere and it's going to end up affecting us. So even the portion of the road that's being fixed and talked about, these are all big problems that we're all thinking about. But this is just one more that I would ask you that you guys consider when you're making your decision.
Sir, can I ask you a question about this? 'Cause
Yes, sir.
when I look at that picture, I just think the school board didn't build adequate retention ponds. I mean, that's what I see when I see that picture. I don't assume that this is somehow caused by the adjacent property.
Yes, sir. So I actually went to Land O'Lakes High School. I'm 42 now. Went to USF, and school's been there a long time. I think a couple of my aunts actually went to the
That's
school.
my point, is that school
Yes, sir.
was built before we had more rigorous drainage regulations, and so we have a lot of properties in the county that were built before we had more rigorous drainage regulations. They didn't build adequate retention ponds, and so when I see that picture, that's what I would assume. Are you a drainage engineer that are saying, and you're saying that?
I'm not a drainage engineer,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
What I would add to what you just said, though, is that it is sort of a fragile area, and you're pointing out that there are some substandard conditions. And adding a large development like this, these are things I would want to make sure that are being addressed and looked at before decided on. That's my point.
All right, thank you. Well,
Thank you very much.
We'll have that addressed when they come back up.
Okay, thank you.
Call it Land O'Lakes for a reason.
What do you expect when you have the mascot is the Gators? I mean,
Well,
Can be better than
let me just ask Mr. Williams, when was that school built?
It was built in the late 70s. Yes.
So I'm assuming before there was swift mud regulations and county regulations about how much drainage you have to provide.
I don't remember when all
So it's
those
your fault.
regulations
Is that
came
what
in.
you're saying?
Yes,
It's your
exactly.
fault?
Okay.
I don't remember when all those regulations came into effect, but yes, I'm sure there were more stringent
My name is
regulations since
Patrick
then.
Rourke. I live at 6201 Drexel Road. What really gets to me is we're going to put in this neighborhood of 130 homes, and we hear about all the vehicles of the homeowners. What we're not thinking about is all the vehicles that it takes to support subdivision. Could be 50 different landscaping companies in there every week, Amazon deliveries, propane deliveries, UPS, FedEx, countless other deliveries and companies that'll come and go. What really gets me is the schools. I know the area is subjected for development, but we're not ready for it. I'm in Pasco County 13, 14 years now. I've seen 12, 13 schools go up from Trinity to Wiregrass. Yet my son is in Land O'Lakes High School. 5 of his 6 classes are in a portable. Simply not ready. We have to be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Jim Host. I live at 6640 Evening Shade Lane, Land O'Lakes, Florida. And you've heard all of the complaints and all of the problems, and everything everybody said here from the neighborhood is 100% valid, and they haven't talked much about the flooding on Bexley Road. That gets to the point where my wife and I have had to park our cars on one side of Bexley Road and walk through the water down to the end of Bexley and then back up to Evening Shade Lane where I live. That wasn't too bad when we were younger, but my wife and I are 72 years old, and I don't really feel like wading through that. And if they put that subdivision in, it is definitely going to affect the water. There's no way it cannot affect it. And so now you know about the water, the traffic, the schools are overcrowded. I can't see any practical way you could even think about putting a subdivision in there. I know what your planning said, and that you don't live there. You need to spend some time there and see what's going on. That it floods not on a regular basis, but periodically, depending on the storm patterns and that. And the traffic is horrible on 41. I don't know when the attorney took those pictures, but I know I've had trouble getting out on the 41 just about any. If that traffic light is there and the school's letting out, you can't get out. You got to wait and wait and wait and hope. When the traffic light blocks the traffic north and south, then the school kids come out and they're all heading south. So you're still waiting for them. You wait and wait and wait. And in the afternoons, it's backed up to 52, and in the mornings, it's backed up to 54. There's just not enough. If you put 130 homes in there, you're going to have over 200 vehicles. I don't know a home around that doesn't have 2 vehicles. If you got kids, you got more. It just can't work.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right.
Could we hear from the school representative to find out what the population at those schools?
Sure. So this particular development sits in
Connerton?
Sits in the Connerton Elementary zone. So we would expect approximately 24 elementary students from this particular development. Connerton Elementary currently sits at 125% of capacity, so that would be my biggest concern. And then Pineview Middle, we would expect about 13 middle school students from this development. Pineview Middle currently sits at about 90% of capacity. Land Lakes High School, this would add about 16 high school students. Currently, Land Lakes is over capacity. However, we're adding significant capacity to Land Lakes through the remodeling project that's going on right now, and they'll be complete at the end of this school year. And so once that's complete, we would expect Land Lakes to be at about 90% capacity also.
Okay. So 2 out of 3 schools are not at full capacity. I'd like to make one other comment about the picture that was up there about the track that was flooded with water. That's close to 1,000 feet from I guess, what I assume is the property line based on this little ledge we have at the bottom. So 1,000 feet. My math is not that great, but I think it's close to, what, 1/5 of a mile or 1/4 of a mile or something. It's about 1/5 of a mile, be about right. So I can't see the correlation between the track field being full of water. But there is one comment that's in our handout. Emergency services, I'd like to at least throw it out there if somebody wants to. Emergency service indicated that they had a concern about getting emergency vehicles in there. I can't find that particular paragraph right now. But it did comment that I think it's on page 404. Yeah, here it is. Emergency management had raised the concern regarding the large amount of natural retention that will be impacted by the development. Not sure what that means, but I assume that's water retention. So, and the third thing I'd like to comment on, you got some beautiful homes out there, but somebody had mentioned only 200 feet. I look at some of these homes in here, I think you're on at least an acre lot or half-acre lot, because 2-acre lots, 2 to 3 acres. Okay. Beautiful homes there, I'll say that. Okay. Well, thank you, that's all I had.
I have a question for staff, for
Yeah,
Essen.
go ahead.
Is Essen still here? No? I'll ask Mr. Henry then. He's my next best choice. So, Mr. Henry, the improvements you're making to Wisteria,
Yes,
those are substandard road improvements, correct?
yes.
Would those same improvements be required if Wisteria was designated a local road?
Yes.
So the fact that it's designated a collector road now didn't affect the level of improvements that you would have had to do to meet the substandard road guidelines?
Not from a substandard road standpoint, no.
So even if Planning Commission and the board were to completely remove Wisteria from the Vision Road map, you'd still have to make those improvements?
Correct, yes.
And if a property came into the west and did development, they'd have to make those same improvements?
Correct, yes.
Regardless of whether it's designated a collector or not?
Correct.
That answers my question.
Any questions?
Commissioners, Clark Hobby again. I'm going to be brief. I think a lot of what you heard today here is some really heartfelt stuff from neighbors, and they're primarily worried about how larger areas that could be developed in the future to the west would affect their neighborhood, and how Wisteria Loop being a vision road could affect their area over a longer period of time. And I don't want to diminish, those are valid concerns, but they're not relevant to the decision that's before you today. We have shown with expert testimony that we meet the requirements of the code and the comp plan, and I don't believe there's any evidence to support a denial of it. But that being said, I think you all can see that we've worked very hard to try to make our neighbors happy and to make the project compatible with the type of landscaping and buffering and project design that we're doing. And we have done a timing and phasing analysis, and we took actual traffic counts. So my video isn't a determinative issue. That happens to be something that I wanted to show you all, but the timing and phasing analysis based on actual transportation science shows that there's adequate capacity. And the fact that we're bringing the road up to standard conditions satisfies the requirements of the code, and then we're going above and beyond that, taking it to our property line. So we've met all the requirements of the code, and there really is not a valid reason for denial. We want to be good neighbors. We're going to be good neighbors, and everyone's going to be proud of this project. The last thing I'm going to say to you is we're going to turn this over to Brian Surak, who's our civil engineer, and he can tell you how we're going to address the drainage concern, because I can assure you Clearview Land Design is not going to design this project in such a way that it's going to flood the neighbors.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hobby? No? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Surak, 1213 East 6th Avenue, Tampa, Florida, with Clearview Land Design. So just, we had the neighborhood meeting, and we've heard today several concerns about the drainage. So I wanted to just go over the drainage patterns on the existing site and talk about how we are going to handle drainage from the project. So right now you'll see these green areas on the site. Right around. So those are wetlands that border the site. And you'll see these little red arrows. Oops. Yeah. So the red arrows down here, see the big lake down here? And then there's red arrows that go in north, flowing northwest. And then over on the other side of our project, on the northeast side, there's some more red arrows that drain that other little pond. So those are both culverts that discharge those lakes to the north, and both of those drain into wetland systems. It was called the swamp in earlier testimony, and that heads towards the west. This is really part of the headwaters of the Anclo River. So I heard it mentioned earlier, what is going to happen to all the water from this site? Well, I can currently tell you right now that the site doesn't store water at all, except for the wetland areas that are on the perimeter. The project will not impact any of those wetland areas. We are not filling in any wetlands on this project. We are not filling any existing floodplain on this project. And when I say floodplain, we check several different sources. We don't just go to the FEMA maps. We check the FEMA maps. We check the current SwiftMud models, the current Pasco County models, and we always design to the worst case scenario. So all of the drainage from this proposed project is going to drain into that purple area on the plan, which is the retention pond for the project. That retention pond will be designed to handle the 100-year storm event. So when I say that, when water flows into that pond, it will not discharge over the banks in a 100-year event. Water will slowly discharge from that pond in accordance with Pasco County and SwiftMud guidelines. One thing about the localized flooding that you see, one thing I can offer is just driving around this area. I noticed that several of the culverts, like these specific culverts, and several of the culverts downstream here in the Bexley Road area, just are poorly maintained. I mean, they can handle probably half the amount of capacity that's meant to go through them. So just a little effort in clearing those paths out may provide a lot of relief for some of the flooding problems that you're seeing out there. And I'm available for any questions.
Can I ask a question?
We're willing to do that on this.
Yeah, correct. We've actually said that the culverts that are, along the frontage of this property will happily clean those out and keep them clear from debris. So, things will flow better.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, since you are a drainage engineer and expertise in that, the pictures that we saw earlier where the school was flooding and the lake was flooding, what do you think the causes of all that flooding in the surrounding area?
Well, it probably is several different things. I would say conveyance is probably the top thing I would look at. Something's blocked, causing things to back up. The other thing is Pasco County, I don't know what event that was. Pasco County over the past few years has had some very significant rainfall events. I mean, they had a couple of 500-year events within the last 10 years, and nothing's designed to handle that. So, it just depends on when the pictures were taken and the conditions at the time. But my first guess would be something's blocked downstream if that was just an isolated event that happened and it hasn't really happened before.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, you've had your turn. Okay. Otherwise, we just keep going around in a circle all night long. So, any other questions from up here?
So I just have just a couple things I want to say is, the issues that are in front of us today, a lot of the things that we've talked about are not relevant to the decision of what we need to make today. But they are concerns of the people who live there. And from a drainage issue, this project, they have to address the issue that goes on with their property. They cannot affect the other areas. And if this area is like every other area in Pasco County, the maintenance has been terrible with the drainage, and therefore it's probably going to make things better when this project is completely done. The future land use on that property is Res 3. And by them coming in, so often that we see projects come in, they say, well, future land use is Res 3, but we really feel that Res 6 is more appropriate. We see that all the time. And that's not the case here. I mean, they're barely over the projected number of units there now. And, I personally think it's a compatible project for this site. Now, having said that, I do, want to talk about the Collector Road issue. And, I have a question to Mr. Rosenthal, is if you're hearing the comments that are being made today, if I know you've probably already sent an email off about that issue, And hopefully it will be addressed, and, you know, maybe some of the folks that cannot come to the next meeting on the 13th, if they had a comment from you regarding what the status of that will be, maybe from a staff recommendation back to the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners, may go a long way with helping them as far as their concerns.
Can I want to make a clarifying statement about that, though?
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew you would.
Because even if you remove the collector status of that road, I don't want to create a misconception that that's going to prevent development on that road.
No, I know that.
Because we allow development on local roads all the time, as long as they're made into a standard condition, which this development apparently is doing. You could still see development on Wisteria Loop, as long as they're bringing that road to standard. The fact that it's removed as a collector road is not going to stop development. So I don't want anybody to leave the room today thinking that because it gets, even if it gets removed from the collector map, it might stop the road from continuing over to Bexley or whatever, maybe. But if a development came into the west of this and they want to do the same thing this development's doing, and they're willing to improve the road to county standards, I don't know that we could deny it just because it's been removed from the collector map.
Well, and I completely agree with you, David, and I fully suspect that there will be other projects that do come in. But the concerns that have been expressed today and to me personally is that it gets expanded beyond the properties that abut this road in this area. So that's the concern.
It may limit it from ever becoming a 4-lane road if you remove it from the collector map, but that's probably correct. But if somebody wanted to continue that road as a 2-lane standard road and put development on it, that removing that road is not going to stop that.
Yeah, and that will happen.
I wanted that to be clear to whoever's suggesting that road be removed.
My point of addressing Don is that it is removed as a collector when it does come back before the Planning Commission and ultimately the BCC. So
That it'll be a staff recommendation, is that what you're saying?
yes.
Well, and I think it's true that if there is another development going in that direction, they're gonna, not only will they have to do the same road improvements, they'll also be required to maintain their own drainage on their own property, just like this one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So,
So I would move for approval. I think
I'll
we're
second
on
it.
P7 right now.
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion?
I was just going to say, and I agree with Commissioner Cox, you know, I know people on both sides and all really good people, and when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike on Wisteria Loop back there, and it doesn't look any different than when it did when I was a kid.
That long ago?
It's been, it was a long time ago. But, you know, as far as the schools go, I am concerned about our elementary school. Obviously, this project isn't big enough for us to, you know, try to get a school site, and the way concurrency, I'm not going to go into details, but the way concurrency is set, I can't, you know, concurrency is not going to cause us to deny this project, but what it does do is we get impact fees, and then those impact fees will go to build improvements at some point in our schools. And then, and also, by the way, Commissioner Cox reminded me with his comment, I did have a couple in passing conversations with Mr. Gadd. I mean, I do work with him. And so, but mostly on the road issue.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure folks knew that.
Okay, any other comments? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Did you do P8 also?
Didn't do P8.
P7 and P8?
Yeah, we're doing them together.
Okay,
Well,
thanks.
you need separate motions. on
Yeah, we
that.
had
Okay,
to.
all right. So we have a motion on P7?
What was your motion on?
So my motion was approved on P7, which
Okay.
passed. But on P8, does he need to call for public comment and all that again?
We did them together, that's why.
You'd opened up the public hearing for both of them, but in an abundance of caution, did anybody not get to speak before?
So seeing no one rise, I'll move for approval of P8.
A second motion, second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Move to adjourn.
A second.
Too late.